it was a long day for my colleagues, and today you had both, and Andrew as well, operation, neurosurgical operation.
Well, Marina was watching, but she wasn't operating.
Yes, but Marina was
somehow I have even blood, I don't know how to manage.
Don't tell everybody about this. So we have a unique opportunity to discuss things we mentioned about responsibility, personal responsibility, social responsibility, different kind of responsibility with our friends, long-term friends, with Gенrі Марша and Marиною Перезагуа. And this is interesting and important opportunity for us because we have a multicultural environment, multicultural discussion. We have different experience. We have different, I hope, different points of view. So we will discuss certain issues. I believe everybody knows already Henry. He is not the first time here. And anyway, what is according to formal statements, Gенrі Марша is one of the UK's most eminent neurosurgeons, author of several books, popular in different dimensions, different spheres, in different continents, and books are here as well. You can ask. I hope Henry will give you some science.
Of course, no problem.
After this meeting. And Marina. Marina is well-known novelist. Graduated in art history from University of Sevilla and the University degli Studi di Padova. Obtained her PhD in philology in the United States, and later she became a professor of language, literature, history, and Latin American cinema at the State University of New York at Stony Brook. Afterwards, she worked for 2 years in the Institute Cervantes de Leon, and she had 3 master's degree and 1 doctorate. And
speaks 4 languages as well. Lucky girl.
4 languages. I went today through YouTube video when you crossed Gibraltar, and a lot of interesting things.
She swam across Gibraltar to Morocco, yes.
Yes.
And she's a rock climber and a free diver down to 46 meters.
46 meters, and a novelist with several books, story of age, which is interesting how to say it in Spanish because age doesn't sound like age at all. How to say this name, story of age?
Yeah, I gave this title exactly because age is a character without voice that nobody listens to.
So it's about strange stories which we have to find and go through today as well. So I went through some ideas and then sketched some ideas to discuss for today, and let me start from topic we have in kmbs, in my course as well. I'm responsible for strategic thinking and several strategic related courses, and we have interesting sources to read. For example, Hacerte Gaigast. Sometimes we talk about Don Quixote. We have Shakespeare with Julius Caesar as well, and it is always about nature of man and moral responsibility, behavior, and different roles we are coming to different situations. So as a novelist, how does fiction help us understand or redefine limits of personal responsibility, especially in complex social and political landscapes, Marina? Can you give your ideas? Because this is completely different perspective. We are doing things. You are creating things. Yeah, it would be interesting because it's about creative narratives. What kind of narratives? You are creating new world, or playing with existing worlds, and how it works?
Me personally, I see fiction as a way to tell reality in a better way. So I don't like to, for example, read literature that explain me directly what I have to think or how. I like to understand through feelings or through fiction, actually. So regarding Don Quixote is funny because I think now is very, very modern, more than ever. I think I always say that Don Quixote was crazy because he wanted to fix the world, and the world cannot be fixed. You know? So to say, it was the world who was crazy, not Don Quixote. Yeah, now we are in a very difficult time where I think fiction can help us to understand reality through the feelings.
So reality through the feelings.
To sense,
is more reality than reality itself. Feelings.
Not to learn, but to
feel.
To eat it, you know.
I don't know. To eat it. Don Quixote is figure of idealism and delusion. In your view, how does this character reflect on the notion of personal responsibility when one's ideals are at odds with societal norms?
What was the last sentence, sorry?
If his ideals are at odds, not in line with social accepted norms. Yeah. What we have, because we have this discussion who is normal, Sancho Panza or Don Quixote, because they are so different.
Sancho Panza, okay. So the problem with Don Quixote, the character, so to say, not the book, is that he was anachronic. He was living in a world that existed only 2 centuries before he was born. And he insisted in coming back to this world. But this world doesn't exist anymore. He has ideas that doesn't belong to this world anymore. Sancho Panza is
more normal.
Well, depending on what you consider normal, but it's more with the feet in the earth, right? It's more
practical.
Practical, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, one of the success of Don Quixote, of course, is in the book, is the dialogue between how to combine the idealistic, anachronic ideas of Don Quixote and the simplicity of Sancho, because in the end it's quite simple. He just wants to have a place to sleep and to...
Just about boundaries of responsibility. Yeah, we have different boundaries into these characters.
Yeah.
Cases. Yeah?
And in this dialogue, I think this is what I meant before when I say you can understand better through fiction, you know? Quixote is completely fiction, but you can see the apocalypse in understand the day-to-day in Don Quixote, you know? When you read Don Quixote.
In medicine, do we have both type of characters? Do we have Don Quixotes or only Sancho Panzas?
I think it's mainly practical Sancho Panzas. And on the whole, with modern medicine, you're always trying to do things on the basis of modern, up-to-date evidence. Reading medical history and modern medicine, only really scientific medicine, slowly started in the 19th century. But up till then, medicine was very strange, but it was entirely based on the idea the great Latin and Greek doctors had said it all. Galen, Hippocrates, Aristotle wasn't a doctor, but he wrote some medicine. So there was a belief in great historical authority rather than, and a golden past when everything was perfect, rather than the modern reality of here and now. And good medicine should all be about not respecting authority and always looking for evidence and questioning everything all the time.
Mm-hmm. We call it bottom-up approach.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
But I'm sitting with you and don't believe you because you behave yourself as a Don Quixote.
Well, I have been described...
In a certain way.
Well, I'm often described as a maverick or as a square peg in a round hole.
So it doesn't support your definition of...
No, it doesn't. It does. I mean, I was thinking about Don Quixote as looking backwards in time. I am supposed to be difficult because I constantly think things can be done better, and I disagree with the present arrangements.
So you have your idea you're fighting for anyway.
Yes. And I mean, it's a balance, as of all these things. I mean, people think I'm joking when I say that brain surgery is actually very easy. Once you've done a lot of operating, it's not difficult. When I look back on my career and all the problems I had and the mistakes I made, they were almost all to do with human relationships with other doctors, with my patients and their families. The technical side of operating was fine. But it's teamwork, communication, accepting other people's criticisms. That's where I made mistakes and where I learnt most. I see medicine now, I see surgery now entirely really as a cooperative, collaborative exercise. And that sort of thinking is increasingly standard in the West, to get away from the single great heroic figure.
Performer, yeah. Thank you. We are coming to important, for me at least, question. You have power in your role.
Yes.
Enormous power.
Yes.
With decisions.
Yes.
And creating new, better worlds, in your opinion, better worlds. You have the same power which you take and use it as a novelist, for example?
Well, not the same, but
Yeah, we could find consequences quicker here in case of Henry, and who knows with your novels how many people will be affected or inspired or whatever. You have the same level of power in certain way.
yeah, I used to think some time ago that, yeah, that literature can change something. And now I'm very pessimistic about that.
Why?
I don't think literature can change positively much nowadays. Maybe I'm pessimistic, but just look the leaders of the world. Sometimes they are very cultivated people. They are, some of them even make beautiful and wonderful articles or speeches or nothing changed in a positive way. You know, I have every time more the tendency of individual help or helping in an active way. That let's say that I write because I enjoy it now, much more than because of a sense of responsibility. But because I have a sense of responsibility in my life, I cannot avoid to write about topics that are important to me, like socially important to me or politically important to me. But this is just because it's my way of being, you know, but it's not because I want to do a literature that I think it can change something.
But it can.
Maybe it can, I don't know, while you read it, but not till the point, you know. Years ago we were maybe too idealistic, and writers, still today, but especially years ago, writers say, yeah, literature can change the world, or even today, yeah. I don't see it for me. I really don't see it.
Henry is a writer as well. Several books, several awards, and speeches as well. And what is more powerful decision within medical processes or influence through your books? Right?
Well, I cannot be certain, but I would like to think I have made more difference to medicine with my writing than all the many thousands of patients I treated. To put it another way, the operating I did, if I had not done it, somebody else would have done it equally well. So that was not a special contribution. I'd like to think I was a good surgeon, a kind doctor, but other people are just as good as me.
Mm-hmm.
When I retired from work in London, from full-time work, my job was taken by one of my trainees, and he inherited my specialist practice on brain tumours. And I'm both jealous and proud of the fact he's definitely operating better than me now, for various reasons. But that, of course, is in theory. As a teacher, that's what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
But although being English, I hesitate to sing my own praises, as we say. I think with my books, particularly with the first book, many people, both doctors and non-doctors in many different countries, have said they found them very helpful because they helped them understand doctors are not either gods or devils, but ordinary human beings, and we make mistakes. And one of the central problems of medicine is how you recognize mistakes and then learn from them so they don't happen again. And the mistakes in surgery and not that you sort of drop something or fumble or cut the wrong thing. You might cut the wrong thing, but it's in the decision making is whether you should operate, how to do the operation. And also very important is managing problems after the operation. I can think of several occasions when I did a very difficult operation and I was very pleased with myself, and then there were problems a few days later and I found it very hard to see that there was a problem. It wasn't just hard to understand it, I just didn't see it. I could look at a brain scan showing a problem and I did not see the problem because I was so blinded by it was a very good operation, you know. How could such a good operation go wrong? And this is all about, you know, psychology. And this is one reason why teamwork, having good colleagues, is so important, because my colleagues don't have they all have blinkers as well to their own weaknesses, but they don't have blinkers to my weaknesses. So they're better at seeing my mistakes than I am. And that's enormously important. And this is what, I think I was talking a bit about this yesterday, which is partly what aviation safety is all about, where everybody will say there is a problem here and they're not blamed for it. And then you learn and make things better. But the problem is, you said, I have power, and of course the great statement by the English historian Acton, all power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And you see that perfectly with people like Putin or Xi Jinping in China. As they become more powerful, they surround themselves with people who only say yes, and they start to make terrible mistakes, because nobody will dare to say, actually, Mr. Putin, maybe invading Ukraine isn't quite such a good idea after all. And this is the corruption of power, and doctors, especially surgeons, are subject to that as well, because as patients, we cannot bear to think that our surgeon does not know what they're doing. We have a deep faith, and this is very bad for doctors. You have to be endlessly self-critical as well as self-confident, and to find that balance is very difficult, but having good colleagues who are friends but you can criticize each other does help solve that problem of finding a balance. And all dictators, the first thing they want to do is to get rid of criticism, abolish free speech, send the opponents to prison. It's all about defending yourself so your self-confidence is not threatened.
So, outstanding surgeon can be this kind of dictator as well.
Yes, and great and outstanding surgeons who can be very good technically. I've seen many of them make terrible mistakes because they're still human beings, and they are too self-confident, and nobody dares to criticize them.
Yeah. So how we should consider this situation in terms of development?
Well, I mean, these things these are questions in people's heads. These are psychological problems, and it's a cultural problem, and it takes a long time to change. And it is, as of everything in life, it is multifactorial. The trouble with us human beings is we always look for single causes, you know. If A, then B. Many mental health is an increasing problem in the West. Everybody's using mobile phones. Therefore, you know, mobile phones are causing mental health problems, which is probably not true anyway. I've tried to change things by writing about it and talking about my own fallibility. The funny thing is that when I wrote my books, which I wrote because my wife told me to, I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, I just wanted to write and tell stories. It's telling stories. I like telling stories, and the best way of communicating to people is telling stories. We all know that. That is how our minds, how our brains think. So I didn't really think when I was telling my stories I was trying to change the world and improve understanding between doctors and patients. But that's actually what I was doing, even though I didn't realize it entirely at the time.
Which is important, probably, as you mentioned, for cultural reasons, for whole professional society in the world.
Yes, I think these are, I think the lessons I learnt from my career, they're all psychological lessons, really. I know there's the technical stuff about how to operate, but that's easy, you know. But it was all the psychology I learnt, which I gave a lecture a few years ago in Michigan at the University of Ann Arbor, where I was talking about all the different balances you have to achieve, a balance between kindness and being cold and detached, a balance between making money and medicine as a vocation, a balance between being self-critical and self-confident, and a balance between being a fierce, ambitious individualist and a team worker. And somebody in the audience, a woman came up to me, she was married to one of the neurosurgeons at Michigan, and said she used to work in Barack Obama's estate, under Barack Obama, at the White House, and she said, everything you said about brain surgery applied exactly to working in the White House. It's all the same problem. It's about human beings, you know, why human beings have been so successful, although we're totally wrecking the planet, of course, is because we cooperate. That is, as my anthropological wife explained this to me, we are essentially prey animals. If you're standing in the jungle naked, you know, all the saber-toothed tigers will eat you. If you're standing there with 20 other human beings waving sticks and stones, you're okay, you know. So cooperation is absolutely essential to human success. But then there's competition as well, and that's where, you know, it's this constant conflict.
It sounds like a lecture in business school. Nature,
sorry,
because it's
well,
management, leadership, and then
I can
nature.
tell you how I stopped the bleeding in the operation today.
That was amazing. I saw it.
No. This is why we are gathering together to catch the essentials.
And the other important point, of course, is that teamwork, in this proper constructive sense, is not everybody agreeing. It is about disagreement and competition within the group, and different people have different skills, different abilities. If everybody was the same, there'd be nothing. You need a few very pushy, creative individuals. And the role of leadership, it seems to me, this is maybe a business school cliche, the role of leadership is to keep the conflict within bounds and provide a sense of overall vision and purpose as to what we are trying to achieve.
You mentioned vulnerability as an essential part of leadership, probably, yeah?
Yes, and of course the problem there is also the question of responsibility. And in something like medicine, that's a problem, because patients come to harm, mistakes are made, and ultimately that has to be laid at the door. It has to be blamed on the leader. So that is not the leader is not in a completely equal. There still is a hierarchy. I would tell when my trainees became senior doctors, in England we call them consultants, I would say, look, you know, you must not try too hard to be liked by your trainees, by your team. You must be fair, you must be friendly, but if you try too hard to be very friendly and nice with them, you'll get it wrong. And I illustrate this in my lectures when I was a young consultant. One of the very difficult things you have to do as a senior surgeon is train the next generation of surgeons. I have a duty to the patient in front of me, but I have a duty to my trainees' future patients who do not yet exist. If I do all the operating myself and simply use my trainees as assistants in neurosurgery, we call it as opening and closing. You have your assistant to open the head, close the head, and you do all the serious, difficult bit in the middle. Your trainees will learn very little, and then suddenly they'll be thrown on the world, not properly trained, and then they will start making lots of mistakes and have to learn real surgery all over again. So as a senior surgeon, you have to delegate, you have to give more and more of the operation as time goes by to your trainees, and that's dangerous because you are a better surgeon than they are. And to watch your trainees operating, particularly if it is dangerous surgery, as much of the operating I did was, it is complete torture. And yet when I was a trainee, and I had good trainers, they would sit there at the side of the operating room, not scrubbed up, watching me operate. I didn't realize they were probably going through hell, you know, having to watch me do things rather slowly and not very well. But I can think of several patients who were died or came to terrible harm because I left too much of the operation to my junior assistant. Because I liked them and I wanted to be liked back in return. It's called the halo effect. If you like somebody, you exaggerate, you think they're better in other things. You know, we tend to think beautiful people are better people. Well, they're not. You know, better beautiful. It's got no connection with their abilities. So I got better as the years went by to know just how much of an operation to delegate to my trainees. And it's difficult. Many surgeons can't do it. They just do all the operating themselves, or as often happens, I think, in Ukraine, the surgical professor will only train his son, and everybody else is just used as for opening and closing.
Did you have any professional training in this part of it's kind of
none,
management?
None at all. There are now
only technical.
Yeah, there are now management courses for surgeons, but when this is 50 years ago when I was training, there was no training about communication, no training about management, no training about team working. There is now. Whether it is good, it probably helps. I'm told by some of my colleagues it can be helpful. But I think the most important influence is your seniors. You imitate, you tend to copy the people above you. So that is why it's so important, in my opinion, that senior doctors like me are open about fallibility, about mistakes. But it hurts. I don't like doing it. You know. I remember I went to America to give a lecture. It was called All My Worst Mistakes. Now that showed, now in America, when you give a presentation, it's all your best results, it's fantastic, you know. And I did the absolute opposite. And there was this completely stunned silence afterwards. And I still don't know. Did they think I was just a completely incompetent surgeon? Or was I mad to talk openly about it? Or maybe both. But I know, in fact, because I spoke to people afterwards, they all said, well, yes, I've had problems like that. But in American culture, you do not admit, partly because of litigation, you don't admit making mistakes, and American positivism, and, you know, everything's going to be all right. As Woody Allen said, America, the land where death is optional.
I will just make a comment.
It's about American culture, you have to add.
I wanted to say before, when I say I don't think that literature can change the world anymore, or we have to understand the magnitude, I know he's modest, of the writing of Dr. Marsh. And this is because I don't know if you remember, but when I first met him, I told him, some of the people that hurt me more in my life were doctors. He's writing about something for the first time. I don't like to use too much the word honesty with him because it's so much used that I sometimes think at some point we'll get empty. But for now we have this word. This honesty is so outstanding and is connected with the fact that affects to every single person in the world, because all of us at some point we are patients and also in a very sick world. So this is kind of a miracle in literature, you know. But this happened once every 100 years.
But there's a sort of paradox about being honest. You have to be very self-confident to stand up in public and say, I fuck up. You know? But the funny thing is, on the whole, in my experience, if you do that, people say, wow, and they respect you. There was a very, very famous American neurosurgeon called Charlie Drake, who was one of the pioneers of a really dangerous, difficult operation on aneurysms, on blow-out blood vessels in the brain. This is now 40, 50 years ago. And he would give talks where he would show photographs of the patients alive and well before the operation, and then say, I killed them, you know, the operation went wrong. And the Americans, the audience will say, wow, you know, wow, Charlie is so honest. You know? But they felt unable to do it themselves. But then he was a great pioneer, so he was doing things nobody else was doing at that time. But on the whole, I mean, we say in English, honesty is the best policy. But in medicine, I mean, if an operation goes badly, it is incredibly difficult to look the patient or the family in the eye and say, well, actually, I got it wrong. I did do that as I got more experienced, in a sense, more self-confident. I was able to do that. But I can remember in my first few years as a consultant, I found it very, very difficult to be straight. And I'd say, well, I'm sorry it went wrong, but I did everything I could. And the patients chose to believe me, or seemed to. Because if you tell people I got it wrong, you worry you are destroying their trust, and then it's very difficult. You know, it's difficult. It's very difficult. And the other big problem about medicine is that the question of talking, how you talk to patients. And I know this is often a big problem in Ukraine, but it's not unique to Ukraine, is patients never tell you afterwards what they think of you. If an operation goes well, you can be extremely rude and unfeeling, but the patient still is pleased and grateful the operation was a success. But if you have to, as you often have to in medicine, you have to say, I can't help, or the person you love is probably going to die, or if it's neurosurgery, probably going to be left with terrible brain damage. I've seen some terrible head injuries from the war here in Ukraine with desperate families. And it's very, very hard to tell people there is no hope. There's nothing to be done. So it's difficult. But the patients and the families usually in neurosurgery, they do not ring me up or write me a letter and say, Mr. Marsh, the English phrase is, you broke the bad news very well, or you broke the bad news very badly. And how can you ever get better at doing anything if you don't get feedback, if you don't get criticism? If we have good teamwork, hopefully, we will get criticism from our colleagues, but we never get criticism from patients. Or if you do, in England, it's months or even years later when the lawyers, they sue you. But at the time, you'll never get commentary. So it does make it difficult to learn.
let me start from Spanish culture. We went through American culture a little bit. It's always positive, has to be, and death is optional, I understood. Ortega y Gasset proposed that I am I and my circumstance. Very famous phrase, yeah. He's highlighting the interplay between self and society in this way, yeah. I'm responsible for myself, probably, yeah, and for wider system, we call it, yeah. In what way we could realize our responsibility for the society, for what kind of influence we could have, not only in professional way, directly performing our duties, but different kind of influences.
I mean, you know, I don't know how you say politologist, but I think the system is rotten in general, and part of the problem is that we are in a completely consumist society, and where everyone just wants the best for himself and look very little around, you know. We speak about things that, problems that they are not really important, but we don't speak about things that are killing the planet. I mean, the planet is going to die soon if we continue like that.
But we will if we will not change our approach, our behavior. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course I don't have the answer, but for example, I feel bad when I have to recycle. I recycle in New York. Mm-hmm. Plastic with plastic, paper with paper, and every single time I do, I feel silly, because it's like the system make me believe that it's in my hand to make a contribution, when anyway everybody knows that especially in America, all the garbage later goes to the same place. So
greenwashing it's called.
You know, we have little power. I mean, we have in individual, you know, helping people in our, you know, close people. Of course we have the whole power, but to change, a radical change like the world needs to, we need something much, a radical change, you know.
There's a very good book called Merchants of Doubt by Naomi Oreskes, who is an American academic sociologist, and it's about the history of climate denial. Mm-hmm. But it shows how with the petrol business in the 1920s, and then with recycling glass and having deposits on bottles, because it's all in America, mm-hmm. and then with the National Rifle Association, who said, guns don't kill people, people do. Yeah. And then with environmentalism, saying, well, it's people throwing litter away, which is the problem. We will say recyclable on plastic bottles, and then it is up to the individuals. Yeah. But it was the same public relations company who came up each time with this advice: you blame the consumer. Car crashes in the 1920s wasn't because of roads and cars, it was because pedestrians didn't know how to walk. The fact that 40,000, 50,000 people are killed by gunshots every year in America is not because of the gun business, but because it's people who have guns. The fact there's an environmental crisis of rubbish is because people are throwing litter away. You know, is always blaming it on the consumer. And as individuals, we are helpless. You know. Yeah. It is politics, I'm afraid.
This is what I want to say.
And I feel very helpless about it. But I understand in Ukraine you have more pressing problems than garbage disposal at the moment.
We have war, we have climate, we have what about social networks? How does it work? I mean, it helps to find these solutions. I mean, to gather people, right people about right ideas, or vice versa. It could be used for creating of strange worlds with strange politicians and then strange beliefs, and this is.
When you say strange, you mean new?
I mean unexpected.
Unexpected, yeah. Original.
Kind of behavior, yeah.
Well, as individuals, we can achieve very little. Strength has to be in numbers, hasn't it?
Yeah.
People have to. Civil society is about people getting together. You know, like the Orange Revolution and Maidan and all that.
We broke this rule of 150.
Yes, we very much so.
But this is about narratives as well. Yeah, you have created your narratives through your reflections and then your experience, and you are creating your narratives as well. And I saw today your article about politicians, about two potential presidents of United States. You were very strict about each of them.
Which article was this?
From El País, I guess.
In El País.
Yeah. Why?
My article was
About.
yeah, no, I know what.
Yes, yes.
But
This is
was strict to say.
Critical. You mean critical?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
It's.
I
I don't know.
have
It's
not
more
read
than
it.
critical.
Well, the point is,
You are a linguist. Why you are writing this kind of articles?
I am what?
A linguist.
Linguist, novelist,
Yeah.
whatever. But you are writing politically strong with your opinion.
Well,
message.
they asked me, you know, I don't, I mean,
Okay.
no,
Okay.
I mean, it's fine, you know, and I enjoy, of course, and the
But
thing
you
is,
care. You care.
Yeah, it looks like
yeah,
it.
yeah.
They asked and you decided to do it.
No,
Why?
yeah. So I have a conflict with
Both parties in the United States.
people think like, oh, Trump is the demon now, like in America, and he is. I mean, he's the most terrible thing that can happen to not America but to the world. But I remember that when Trump was elected, the Times had a cover with Trump, like if he will be a atomic bomb. I don't remember exactly, but like if the climate change was all the fault of Trump, that actually just was elected, you know. I'm sorry, but United States is United States, and any president, you know, you can have bad or you can have worse, but you're not. I mean, I don't imagine now a very good president, you know. Obama deported more people than Trump, you know. The way you do, okay, is different, but yeah, he made Obamacare, which is an amazing improvement, you know. But what I mean is, like, I don't believe that United States is ever going to consider for giving you an example, you know. Well, this is usually happens, but Trump is going to, I think, at least Biden is going to lose the Latin votes. This is because he started giving some help to immigrants.
So, sorry, but I'm to the point.
Yeah.
You are using your voice.
Yeah.
You are leveraging your voice through media to make a statement with expectation to influence or to reflect or to why did you do this? Why did you write? Why did you say your...
In the press, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, you know, my column is about opinion, so it's my opinion, you know, it's like...
But you care. I mean, you are troubled by the state of the world, so you are trying to change it by writing. And would you bother to write if nobody read it?
No, yeah, but I'm just upset. I write because I'm upset.
You're upset. You're trying to do something about it. So you are trying to use writing, although it's journalism, not novel writing. Yeah.
We have two different situations. We have situation when we are upset and trying to find the way to recover or whatever, or we are looking for better solution in general, in systematic way. Yeah. How we can, because what my understanding, Henry creates new level of understanding, opening human dimension to this important area of medicine, within management, within people relationships, etc., and psychology, and sorry, and what are you creating, or you are just reflecting on this bad situation? Did you try to create anything radically new?
Try to describe the situation, you know, that I see. Try to have a sense of reality, because I really think we lost the sense of reality, you know, and that while I think the priority will be, but I mean, this is completely naive, but to be together and first save the planet, because soon we will not have a planet where there is not even a...
But everybody saves the planet.
Everybody, sir?
Everybody is trying to save the planet in his own way.
You think so?
If you will listen to them.
Every day, I don't know how many species extinct, you know, every day.
But everybody is right, doing his own, explaining what he is doing. Everybody has own way to explain why he is right.
Sorry, I didn't understand that.
This is my English bad.
No,
sorry.
Well, everybody thinks they're right. Yes, Hitler thought he was right. Putin thinks he's right.
What I mean. Everybody is right. Yeah.
Everybody thinks he's right. No?
Of course.
Okay.
Who is wrong? Because
everybody's wrong.
Yeah, but basically everybody. I mean.
Okay. We have everybody is right. Everybody is wrong. So what we should do to save the planet?
As I say, it's very naive, starting, I don't know, using less, I mean, it's impossible, it's naive, it's not going to happen, but starting with less meat, less cars.
Consumerism?
Of course, consumerism, you know.
No, we know, I mean, the solution to climate change is known. We know how to solve the problem. Mm-hmm. The problem is political action. In theory, we should all be, in the West, I agree, in Ukraine, the war is a separate thing.
Of course.
You know, we should all support political parties campaigning for green policies. And I should be out there waving banners, but I don't. So I feel bad about it. But it's difficult.
So Green Party will solve the problem?
No, but if you vote for the Green Party in a democracy, the main parties will then have a more green agenda to stop people voting for the Green Party.
This is assumption.
Yes, but it's probably some truth. It depends on your electoral system. Okay. But in England, where it's so-called first past the post, it's not proportional representation.
and think how Greenpeace, for example, years ago was defend the whales, and the other day I was in, I don't know where in Spain, and I see a poster of Greenpeace speaking about something of queer theory or something. I say, really? I mean, this is not Greenpeace, you know? So, where did it go? You know, years ago I asked my students about the future of the planet, they were optimistic. Today when I ask, it's just save yourself if you can, you know.
Well, the great might have been question is what would have happened with those hanging chads in Florida in 2000 if Al Gore had won the election instead of George W. Bush. We might be living in a profoundly different world.
Yeah.
Because a lot of history is random. Yeah. Historians are very good at explaining why things happened, but they cannot predict at all. So in other words, their explanations have very little value.
Sometimes then they cannot explain as well.
Well, that as well.
History as well.
And again, it's partly because it's multifactorial. You know, history is, there are lots of influences. It's not just a 3-body problem, it's a 20-body problem.
Okay, if you have questions, guys, you can, please, let's start from you after that.
Thank you. I have a question to Harry. Well, you look like a person who is fighting for something good, who devoted himself for fight for good.
Yes, please use your microphone.
Devoted himself to the fight for good.
You turn the microphone on.
No, it's
sorry, I can hear.
And that also means that you fight with some evil. So, what do you consider the most evil you're fighting with? The most important one?
At the moment, Russia. Very simple answer to that. I mean that, seriously. I think Putin's regime represents all that is bad and wrong in human society. I can see no redeeming features at all.
Yeah, but what stands behind Russia? So what it is?
Well, they're gangsters. I mean, basically why, you all know this, why Putin has invaded Ukraine is because a successful democratic Ukraine, despite its many problems, is a terrible threat to his kleptocratic, autocratic regime. That is why he has invaded. He dresses it up in talks about, you know, Mother Russia, Ukraine never really was a state and all that rubbish.
Yeah, but there are a lot of, let's say, Russians are in, for example, Africa, so China. So, I mean, Putin is not something special, I would say. Is it because it's closer to Western world, so close? So, why you consider him as a problem number one?
Well, because I say him and his system, because it is autocratic, and if he is successful, that is a green light to autocratic leaders, North Korea, Iran, China, all over the world.
So he inspires all of them.
Yes, he inspires bad people.
Okay, thank you, and please introduce yourself. Short introduction and question, please.
Vadim Zukin, Laleka Hospital, the first and the only JCI accredited hospital in Ukraine. Dr. Marsh, thank you very much for coming and helping Ukraine. It's very important for our country. My question is about artificial intelligence. What's your prediction about the future of artificial intelligence in the healthcare?
Well, first of all, you know, predicting the future is very difficult, as they say. I think, I mean, you have to distinguish between artificial general intelligence, AGI, and artificial intelligence. Artificial general intelligence is the idea that computers can be built that will be like, that will sort of emulate the human brain, will be sort of cleverer than we are. I mean, first of all, a handheld pocket calculator is much smarter than I am at doing arithmetic. You know, so what? Secondly, the enthusiasts for AGI who say it is a huge existential threat to the human race and will be smarter than we are, you have to understand we cannot even define what human intelligence is. Whenever psychologists, the philosophers, the neuroscientists, we can't define intelligence, and we do not even begin to understand how our brains work. So the idea that computers and transistors can imitate the brain is an act of religious faith. It is not, it is probably science fiction. When I was a medical student more than 50 years ago, there were two neurotransmitters, the chemicals that connect the nerve cells, acetylcholine and noradrenaline. There are now over 100. I mean, you know, and the brain, the more we look at the brain, the less we understand. It is fantastically complicated. We cannot even begin to understand how physical matter produces pain, vision. Why is eyesight different from hearing when it's all the same physical neurochemistry? We cannot answer any of these questions. So to say that, you know, artificial general intelligence, soon computers will be cleverer than we are, it seems to me very unlikely. It's possible, but very unlikely. If you talk more specifically about AI as opposed to AGI, and then now we're talking about ChatGPT and backward propagation, large language models, all that stuff. Again, it's interesting. 10 years ago, Stuart Hinton, who was one of the developers of inventors of backward propagation and large language models, said, oh, it would be very stupid for a medical student to go into pathology or radiology. It'll all be done by AI. Nobody is saying that now. It is all about AI-assisted radiology, AI-assisted pathology reporting. Partly because nobody yet has solved the problem of what are called hallucinations. AI makes mistakes. They're not really hallucinations in the strict meaning of the word. They're confabulations. The AI has trawled the whole of the internet, and all it is doing with the large language models is statistical prediction of what the next word will be. And it is not 100% reliable at all, by any means. So I think AI will have a big role in medicine, but it is not a magic wand, and I would be surprised if any decisions are made by AI without human import. But it will be very good for looking at huge data, huge data sets, seeing patterns which we ourselves don't see. So it certainly will have a big impact. People are saying that, you know, it'll be very good for pharmaceuticals, that AI will predict the shapes of molecules and proteins and come up with new drugs. But again here, there is so much hype. For instance, DeepMind came up with AlphaFold, the AI for predicting protein structure. Fantastic. But actually, a lot of that depended upon human beings doing the work first, and it wasn't completely accurate, so it may become more accurate. But there is so much hype out there because Silicon Valley venture capitalists are putting billions of dollars into it, vast sums of money. They're all hoping this will be the next big thing. And it's very difficult to know how much is hope and hype and how much it really is going to make a big difference, because it's sort of contaminated by people hyping it all up. You know the story probably of Theranos, Elizabeth Sellers, this American girl who dropped out of Stanford and then started a startup which was going to do a whole array of blood tests on one drop of blood. And she got Kissinger, Schultz, Rupert Murdoch. They all put money into it, millions of dollars. And it was a complete con. It was absolute rubbish. But this will be the next big thing, you know, full blood analysis on one drop of blood. And that was an example of the way there is this tradition in Silicon Valley. You have an idea, you then puff it up very big to get millions of dollars, and then you hope you can actually achieve what you said you would achieve. So you have to be very skeptical about what you read, about what people are saying is the latest big breakthrough in AI. Sure, AI will make a big difference, and obviously in military weapons, you know, drones of AI, things like that, are probably going to make a big difference. Not a very nice one.
Thank you. Vadim?
A couple of words about Robert Da Vinci robotic surgery.
Yes.
Because I know that in Russia there are dozens of Robert Da Vinci. In Ukraine there is just one illegal one.
The robot surgery is being used mainly in kidney surgery and prostate surgery for prostate cancer. Very difficult. There have been no formal controlled trials comparing robot-assisted surgery to not robot-assisted surgery. You can do things with a robot you can't do with your hands. I mean, to get down to the prostate gland with a robot, you can come right round inside like that. You can operate round a corner. So that's a big advantage. But the problem then is it really making a very big difference? Funnily enough, death rates for prostate cancer have not changed very much, despite all the new technology. And one of the problems is if you have new technology, you will use it indiscriminately. So I think there is a big future for robotics, but how much difference it will make, I don't know. And in brain surgery, at the moment, it's not relevant. Surgery involves two things. One is pulling and moving things. The other is feeling. In a lot of brain surgery, the operation I was helping Dr. Mizak with today was all about pulling, but not pulling too much, so you tear the brain and taking out the tumor. And this in robotics is called haptics, whether you can reproduce in the controls the actual feel of what you're doing. And for things like prostate surgery, I'm told the haptics are good enough. But at the moment, for brain surgery, the haptics are not good enough. You cannot reproduce accurately enough the actual feel of what you're doing with your gloved hands. So yes, I'm sure there'll be lots of progress, but as of all new developments in medicine, it's sold as a great big wonder thing, and then it's decided, well, actually, it's that in a more select number of cases is going to be of value. So it's all about relative, the opportunity cost. If you spend your money on more Da Vinci robots in Ukraine, what could that money have been spent on? Could have been spent better on something else. But Da Vinci robots, surgeons are like toys for the boys. I've got more Da Vinci robots than you know. So again, you have to look very cautiously and skeptically at it. I would love to play with the robots. I'd like to operate the robots. It'd be great fun. But whether it actually would be very useful or not in my specialty, I don't know. But yes, there'll be more and more robotics, I think.
Okay, thank you. Do we have another question? Yes, please. Elena.
Thank you very much for such an opportunity and for your presentation and general discussion, lots of topics. Thank you, Henry.
Elena, introduce yourself.
My name is Daria Kutsenko, and I'm co-founder of Technology of Progress. It's an NGO in Ukraine. And also I'm executive MBA in Kиєво-Могилянська Бізнес-Шкоla. Well, firstly, probably a short reflection. You said that honesty is the best policy. And to be honest, I've heard the opposite, that honesty is a certain form of cruelty. And if we are talking about representing patients and their relatives, some awful results saying, "Bye, sorry, I fucked up." Probably its honesty could be in some case, but for them probably this sacralization and representation of operation as a black box provide them with a feeling that everything what was done was the best option ever possible, and that's why nothing could be improved.
No, I accept that. I think the question of honesty with your colleagues and your trainees is different from honesty with patients and their families. But I think if you're going to lie to people, you have to have very good reasons for doing it. And it's not to protect yourself. It is, I quite agree that sometimes, quite often, I would not be entirely honest with patients and their families because it wasn't really in their interest. It would not help them. Because there is a lot of litigation against doctors in England and America, we have insurance, so it does not, I would not lose money if I was sued successfully by a patient. But if I made a mistake where the patient has lost the ability to work and they have a legal claim against me, it is my duty to tell them then. Which again is very unusual, but I would tell patients, I said, I think you should sue me because I think I made, or I'd say, I think if you should get a second opinion, you may find another doctor who would say, well, actually what Marsh did was wrong. And I would tell them that. And I'd say I was very terribly sad and sorry about that. But if there was not a legal claim against it, and there was no question of money involved, I agree. If you tell the patient or family, the patient, the person, your child has died because I made a mistake, that makes it that much worse for them. In fact, 3 weeks ago in London, I was bicycling along the road near my home. I bicycle everywhere. I no longer have a car. And I was stopped by a woman who said, "Oh, Mr. Marsh, do you remember me?" And I said, "No." I'm often stopped by patients and families. And then she said, "Well, your son, my son rather, her son, you operated on my son 30 years ago." And I said, "Oh, well, I don't remember you." And then she told me his name, and I then did remember it. And it was a case where it was a very bad cancerous tumor. I was young, inexperienced. I thought I'd done a brilliant operation. The child came back a few months later. And there was a problem, but I could not believe the tumor had come back. I'd done such a good operation, and I should have got a brain scan, and I didn't. And in fact, the tumor had come back, and the child died. And the mother said to me, "Well, no, we blamed you for our son's death, although we now understand it actually would have made no difference." But, that was a mistake I made. And she said, "Well, we've read your book, and we forgive you." But, and I can't quite remember what I said to them at the time, but I think I just kind of denied it. I didn't. It would have been better, probably, if I'd said, "I'm terribly sorry, I should have got a brain scan." It meant, because I hadn't told them the truth, for several years they blamed me for their son's death, and that was very bad for them, although they had come to terms with it. If I had been more honest, probably they would have suffered less. So you have to make a judgment in each case. But the important thing is that if you feel like lying and not telling the truth, it should not be just to protect yourself. It should be because you genuinely feel it will not help them. And that's obviously very difficult, because your judgment of what's good for me or good for them is very subjective, very, very biased. But with your colleagues, and particularly with the young doctors you are training, I think it is absolutely mandatory, essential, to always say when you made a mistake, because your duty is to stop them making the same mistake.
And you do the same during operations, for example, as you told that sometimes you're delegating some operations to your trainees and you could supervise them.
Yes.
But if there is some mistake, you're just stopping it at the moment and providing some not feedback, but you're like interfering in the process.
Yes, and if the operation goes badly, it is my fault. Because what the junior doctor does is under my control. So it's my responsibility. We say in English, there are no bad soldiers, only bad officers. But it's difficult. I cannot say I always got it right. These are things I only came to understand towards the end of my career, and especially actually after I had retired. When my first book was published in America, and I trained a lot of American neurosurgeons who came to work with me in London, I told you the story about the lecture I gave in America. So I was very anxious. I thought the Americans would, my American colleagues would say, God, you know, Marsh is a terrible surgeon, and here he is boasting about it. But in fact, I got a lot of letters and emails from a lot of very famous American neurosurgeons, some of whom I knew, some of whom I hadn't met. There was many, many of them. They said, your book's wonderful. It's the only one which really tells the truth. But there's a catch in that story. Almost all of them had retired. It's as though only after you've retired, you can take your blinkers off and see the tightrope you have been walking over for so many years.
I'm sorry, first of all, the very last one.
Yes, please.
Due to the fact that the lecture is called The Boundaries of Your Personal Responsibility, on one of the lectures in kmbs, we have been told that what differentiates the leader from the typical, even highly qualified worker is responsibility.
Yes.
And it was a shock for me, to be honest. Not a shock, it's not something I have not known, I have not realized it. And I was like driving home, and then I stopped, and I don't know why, but I was crying for half an hour, understanding that there were lots of different opportunities I have not taken, just due to the fact that I was afraid of doing some mistakes on top management positions, for example. And it was a kind of extra mega insight for me at that moment. And I was wondering, you mentioned that in any case, when the operation is over and the patient is recovering, for example, and his relatives are at home, and you have told everything to your trainees and your colleagues and so on, you're going home, and afterwards, do you have this bothering thing in your mind that something could be done better, for example, or you like replaying this situation? Because definitely operations, it's a super responsible and highly sensitive thing to do. And how do you, if something went wrong, for example, how do you manage to, like, not feeling guilty for too long, to recover somehow from this mood and state?
When you're a trainee, even if it was your mistake, it's always your boss ultimately who carries the can. So I would feel bad about having done something, having had a bad result. It may not have been a mistake, but it's a bad result. But I didn't feel frightened. I didn't feel really bad about it. When you become a senior doctor, it's basically it's fear, it's shame. Shame is one of the most powerful human feelings. Coming back to what we were talking earlier about cooperation, public shaming is a very, very strong feeling. Shame, guilt, anxiety. You know, you're worried about your reputation. That stupid young man Marsh operated, and look what happened. I might do the same thing 40 years later. The great Mr. Marsh operated, and nevertheless the patient died. But, you know. So it feels very different at the beginning of your independent career. And if a patient came to harm and I felt I could have done things differently, I would feel terrible about it, often for many weeks. But you have to go on operating. You can't say stop. Just like with the war in Ukraine, you can't say everything is horrible. You know, I want to run away. Well, some people have run away, of course, and you lot haven't. But But as the years went by, I would still feel terrible, but only for a few days, because I would feel, well, most of the time my patients do well, and when I've had disasters like this before, maybe the patient died, but I'm still here, I survived, and so I still would feel awful and terrible, but not for so long. And I'd tell my trainees or my junior colleagues if they were upset about a bad result, and on the whole, surgeons don't talk about these things, but sometimes they do. And I'd say, look, if you weren't upset, if you weren't miserable, that would be even worse. You know, you have to accept that the work we do as doctors, not just neurosurgeons, it hurts. Patients come to harm. And of course, the more you care for your patients, the more it hurts when they come to harm. And it may not be your fault. You have to witness terrible suffering. And that, of course, is happening at the front all the time now. And you mustn't develop compassion fatigue, but somehow you have to bear witness to all this, but carry on working.
Okay, thank you, Daria. And please, another question.
Here we go. It's a great honor to meet you, actually. So it's a great pleasure just, to follow your conversation. So my name is Lana Shpakovich. I'm only bachelor in cultural studies, the second year, so the second course in Kиєво-Могилянська Academy. So, and I would like to ask you a question. So, Mr. Marsh, and actually it's a really great honor to meet you. So, what is the main challenges and probably the main, problems in Ukrainian neurosurgery and neuroscience as a field? Because unfortunately, we don't have, much development in neuroscience, in cognitive neuroscience, for example, like in the Netherlands, like in the UK, of course. And what could we do for it? So, I mean, what is the main problems in this field in Ukraine? So,
well, I can't really answer about neuroscience. Okay. But I mean, in general terms, neuroscientific research requires a lot of money, which is why most of it's going on in America, because America spends an awful lot of money on scientific research, and often the best British scientists go to America because they're paid more money and they have more opportunities. In terms of neurosurgery, there are two main problems. One is there is no proper postgraduate training. It's chaotic, and it's become even more chaotic because of the war. And that is a big problem now and in future. I won't talk now in detail, but there is a big contrast between the system you have here, which is a legacy from the communist Soviet past, when an awful lot of medicine was sort of Potemkin medicine. You had lots of professors and theory and lectures, but no actual practical training. And the other problem is medicine here is, or surgery, much of it, not all of it, is very much like the English system I went into 50 years ago, where the senior professors are like gods and the dictators and often do not do much training. So there are serious problems. There are some very good individual surgeons, and some of the hospitals here are very well equipped, but there are a lot of philosophical, psychological problems as well as technical ones. And a lot of that is a legacy from the Soviet past, when communist medicine from 1917 onwards went on its own. It deviated away from mainstream Western medicine.
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask you a question. So I'm so sorry, I'm not a specialist in this field. So, but anyway, it is really interesting and it is fascinating, everything that is connected to neurosurgery and neuroscience. And what do you think about some, before me, there was one question about artificial intelligence in neurosurgery. And what do you think, for example, is it possible to implant some, artificial intelligence, for example, in really in really complicated traumas. For example, for our soldiers who
no, it's not.
It's not.
These are called computer-brain interfaces, where you can put electrodes on the surface of the brain, and work has been done. This has mainly been done with people who are completely paralyzed, and then they can think about moving a robotic arm, and maybe some prosthetic arms, but this is very experimental, very expensive. Things will certainly get better, but at the but in terms of severe brain damage, you cannot undo that. Its main application is and will be for spinal injuries and paralysis, and there are great opportunities, but it's early days yet. There are problems. First of all, only 1/3 of the brain is on the surface, because the brain is folded like a crumpled up ball. You cannot get at 2/3 of the surface of the cerebral cortex. And yes, we can do things with vision and with movement, but in terms of thinking, feeling, intellect, the deep bits of the brain, I do not see any easy way in which you can access that with electrodes. Having said that, though, I mean, you heard of cochlear implants for deafness, where if people who have severe hearing loss, you take out much of the inner ear, and put a microphone in with an electrode that goes into the nerve for hearing. And the bandwidth of a cochlear implant is only about 25 to 30 megahertz bandwidth. And yet people with cochlear implants with a lot of training seem to have almost normal hearing. But the normal bandwidth of a normal optic nerve, but of the channels, is about 300. So the brain can take very, very limited information and then create sound. And this, of course, is because perception is largely expectation. When we see something, actually, we're really looking at a model already, a prediction in our brain, and then comparing what we see with what we expect. The simplest way of illustrating that is to say that when you're going down a staircase, if there is one step more or one step less than what you expect, you feel completely confused, because we live in a model, we live in a predictive model of the world. Every time we move, it's based on a prediction. And presumably babies and young children, what they're doing is they're building up the model in their brain. And there is some evidence that we are born with some of that model. Some of it's already wired into our brain. So perception is expectation.
Thank you very much.
Sorry for that, but a bit of neuroscience.
Thank you.
It's really quite fantastic, and so I'm not an expert in this field, but I'm highly interested in. So that's why it was a great insight. So thank you.
Thank you. And the last question, Andrei.
I have a question for Henry. My name is Denis Blushinsky. I'm co-founder of Ukrainian NGO from country of Ukraine, from country to Ukraine, and our issue is about the personal responsibility. And for my mention, for my thinking, it can be born in some area, in some mental dimension, and my question about this area. You interfere a lot with the human brain, and you see in front of you almost every day what makes us different different from animals. And have you realized where our humanity lives? Not the minimal geometrical or some physical parameter, but but I talk about something something that elevates us to the title of the human. Maybe it's not physical point, but maybe you have some.
Well, I do not have religious faith, and I do not believe in a human soul, for two very simple reasons. As in neurosurgery, you often see people with severe damage to the front of the brains, and they suffer personality change. They're not the same person again. So what makes them a good husband, a good lover, a clever person, depends upon the physical integrity of their brain. And when we die, our brains, like the rest of our body, will decompose and be rearranged into lots of atoms and molecules. So the only way, so therefore I think I don't think there can be an afterlife, because I think when our brains die, that's the end. Now the other problem in medicine and in neurosurgery is I did pediatric work. My own son almost died from a brain tumor when he was a baby. You see terrible things. You see young children dying from head injuries, tumors. Children are being killed every day in Ukraine at the moment. And really, if you believe in a kind God, how could a kind God allow that? And the answer most religions come up with it, well, there's an afterlife. You know, everything will be sorted out afterwards. Bad people will be punished and go to hell, and good people will go to heaven, which is a lovely thought. I wish it was true. But our trouble is I cannot believe there's any life after death. So therefore I cannot believe in a kind God. There may be a bad God. And I don't know why the universe came into existence. But the Christian idea, or the Muslim Islamic idea of an essentially benevolent God does not correspond to my experience of life. Does that answer the question?
Okay, it's not about religion. It's more about our capacity to be a human in our life.
That's the frontal lobes. The main difference between our brains are almost identical to the brains of chimpanzees, but the frontal lobes, the front bit of the brain, are bigger. And one theory, we were discussing this yesterday, one theory why we have bigger brains than chimpanzees and gorillas is we have a bigger social group. We have larger, we live, when we were hunter-gatherers before civilization and the Neolithic revolution, as it is called, the idea is it's because we have complex social groups, we have developed bigger brains because of that. I think animals suffer. I think animals feel pain, as we do. The great Dutch primatologist, Frans de Waal, who died just 3 weeks ago, who studied bonobos, which used to be called pygmy chimpanzees. They are our nearest evolutionary ancestor. We had a common ancestor with bonobos, I think about 5 million years ago, people tell us. And he says bonobos show sympathy, jealousy, moral hate. They have a sort of moral judgment. It is not unique to us. So I don't think we are very different from animals in that sense. We are, because we have speech. And because we have language, we can build these very, very complex societies. We pass on knowledge. The big difference from other animals is they cannot really teach each other in the way that we do, and they cannot record information in the way that we do. That seems to me perhaps the biggest difference.
Okay, which is a good message, I think. We have some difference and we have potential. So thank you very much for today's meeting. If you have any questions or requests to sign the book, please come after this meeting. And thank you very much, Marina, and thank you very much,
Pleasure.
Mr.
De nada.
Marsh.
Marina would say.
We have great conversation and some things to think about.
Okay, it was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.